Welcome to another episode of B2B Marketing Futures, the podcast for B2B marketers, sponsored by AdSact, the B2B ad platform. Today we are diving into one of the trickiest challenges in marketing, which is defining and reaching your ICP in industries where no standard categories exist. Our focus today is Fintech and banking, where audiences are fragmented, products are complex, and demand generation requires real creativity. I'm joined today by Aurélien and Matthieu, who both bring deep experience navigating these challenges. But before we get into the conversation, I'd love for you to introduce yourselves and share a bit about your current role and focus. Welcome.
Thank you, Joaquin, for having us today. Matthieu, I start first, if it's okay to you. I'm Aurélien, so I started my growth journey about 10 years ago now, so it's been a while. Always in B2B startup companies. I'm now switching to revenue operations. I have been switching over the last few years. Fast forward to summer 2022, I joined Numeral, a Fintech company where we launched the GTM team with Matthieu. The company was acquired in December, and now I moved into a role in the company that acquired us, which is Mambu. So yeah, really excited for me.
Welcome. And Matthieu, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot for having us, Joaquin. So Matthieu has pretty similar experience than Aurélien. 10 years in product marketing in B2B SaaS companies. I joined Numeral at the same time as Aurélien. We were the two people marketing team, and we built the marketing at Numeral from the ground up, and switching in a new role in a new company very soon. So that's our last gig with Aurélien. Pretty excited to be here.
Well, thank you so much. Great introductions. Thank you both. Let's start with the big picture, okay? Why is defining and segmenting your ICP in fintech and banking so complicated in the first place?
So for us, specifically for Numeral, I think it ties to the product we offer. Because basically the problem we solve is enabling our customers to make bank payments at scale. So who needs it? Any kind of company needs that. So companies that do, like classic companies that do classic payments, so paying their suppliers, their salaries, etc. But they are already well addressed by tons of other solutions on the market. So that leaves companies for which payments are key parts of their products. And it can go from like insurance companies and real estate to, of course, payment companies and banks, etc. So as part of defining our ICP, when we started our journey at Numeral, the challenge was trying to define and find an served categories in our market. But as I'm talking to you, talking about banks, payment companies, lenders, I'm already segmenting our ICP by big, understandable group. And so I guess the first insights I would share here is start somewhere. It might not be ideal. It might be super, super broad, but start by defining ICPs and segmenting your ICP with things that make sense to you, that you think make sense to the market before refining. And then what is a bank? Maybe Barclays, it will not be the same that your local private bank, that's your local building society. So within these big groups, they all have different needs. In payments specifically, they're not using the same payment methods and whatnot, and our product cannot address them similarly. So there is a qualitative job on our side to understand, okay, what is the state of the market? What is the state of equipment on solutions related to ours in the market in different categories of like banks, for instance? That's the first element of answer.
Hey, great. So let's move into the second question then. About once you define a nuanced ICP, how do you translate that into campaigns on platforms like LinkedIn, Google, Meta, which often force you into broad and very imprecise categories?
Yes, so that's, I can take this one because obviously I was most of the time in charge of putting that in place. That's where, the collaboration between your product marketing and the growth team or the growth person in my case is really important. For Meta, it was kind of easy. We didn't really do it for different reasons, but the target was more focused on LinkedIn and Google. For Google, it's an interesting story. Obviously, the segmentation there, it's based on the keywords. And we've got an interesting story about that because when we started the journey in summer 2022, really placed big bet on SEO and on some zero search terms that, Google say that nobody is really looking for. But actually, when you deep dive into it, like many people are, and we started to produce content that was really specific to the B2B audience, and that wasn't produced before. Matthieu can talk about it, obviously, because he was writing a lot this content. And when we came into Google Ads, it was actually really difficult to get Google display the ads themselves. So we were kind of limited to just showing ads linking to our white papers that people were really keen to download because we were like the only one producing this kind of content. So that was for Google.
Well, sorry,
Yeah,
why was so hard to get these ads in front of people?
Yeah, most of the time Google just said there was not enough searches, so just didn't want to put the keywords at all. So that was really the main limit. We are really onto a very specific sector. We didn't want to have ads that were too broad. It was kind of the same for the SEO strategy. We wanted to really stay focused on the B2B sector on very niche questions, but we knew our prospects were going to look for on the internet. So you don't want to have like, 6 or 7 figure traffic on the website. 5 is enough, but you want those 5-figure traffic to be really qualitative. And actually, that's an important point, and that's going to be an important point for LinkedIn as well. What you want is to have consistently leads that are of quality in terms of persona within your audience. So there are 2 things you really need in terms of leads. You need leads that are in your market in terms of accounts, B2B. So you need quality accounts that are reaching out to you, and you need also quality leads in terms of persona, so persona that are higher up enough into the hierarchy, so you can then with the sales team follow up on the accounts and have meetings and potentially open opportunities. So when you start thinking about it, well, then you're really focused on very specific keywords. Those specific keywords worked very well in SEO, but on Google Ads, it was much more difficult to have, all the panel of keywords we wanted to rank for. So that was quite an interesting experience in that regard.
Niche topics, and that's how we built part of our marketing engine and our brand, like positioning ourselves as experts on niche topics. That also ties back to the first question, because at first, we don't have there's no standard category. It's not easy to really segment your ICP, but doing so, you know what you're solving for, and you know what you want to be recognized as an expert on, and you let the audience find you, and you let your ICP find you. And from the people that are coming to you based on what you put out there in terms of content, in terms of topics you're talking about, also helps you define this ICP. You see who comes back regularly to you. You start to see pattern in the forms, in the people that sign up to your forms. That helps you define also your ICP. When you have no clue, that's a way to get insights into building and segmenting your ICP.
That's really interesting, and it also it's a big bet, right? Because you mentioned that you were spending a lot on SEO, and on the other hand, Google was telling you that actually no one was searching for these terms. So you are almost creating a new category, which is hard with people searching for something. Maybe you can create a new category with LinkedIn ads. That's a bit easier. Maybe we will discuss LinkedIn in a second, but creating a category using Google and trying to that's a big challenge in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. So actually, it's funny because that's one of the first conversations I had with the CEO and the VP growth. So we worked with during this journey. And one of the reasons I joined Numeral is that my first specialty was in SEO. So I initially started with that. And I think the reasoning behind is also what's the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is that you produce guides that are super interesting for your audience, but not only for your audience, but also for people joining the team sometimes. So it's happened a lot that you want to make those new joiners in the team ramp up on some very specific niche topics they may not be aware of. So they can also use those guys to just have more information about the sector. So the worst case scenario is that you've got plenty of content for your emails, plenty of content for your LinkedIn. You've got guides that you printed for your events. You can use them in Google Ads for as many keywords as Google want to display. You can use them in, whatever channel you want to use. And the worst case scenario, SEO doesn't work. You produce some interesting content. So you have to understand that in the fintech sector, trust is really key. And for us as a very new company, trying to deal with fintechs and banks asking, is Numeral strong enough for our flow of funds and, dealing with all this money that is the core of their business. It was really interesting for us to put that on paper, have a blog that was super neat, super niche, but also showed that we were able to understand what was going on in their companies.
Yeah, and would your strategy been different with AI and all the craziness about LLMs and people actually searching directly on ChatGPT instead of Google? Or would you today, if you start the same business, would you do the same strategy and go hard on SEO and content as well, or would it be
So why we came up with this content in the first place? Because we needed to like educate ourselves, educate the team on the topics we were like our product was about, and there was nothing out there. Like there was nothing on Google, no publicly available qualitative content. So we saw that as an opportunity and like as a boulevard, and we took it, and it worked. So a bit of luck here, I guess, but it did work. Increasing adoption and democratization of LLM, we started appearing as references for ChatGPT answers on the topics we were covering. So had ChatGPT been there before, I guess we wouldn't have had qualitative answers, maybe not, on the topics we were looking at and we wanted to document. So, or we would have maybe outputted a lot more content, a lot more qualitative content more easily using these tools, but I don't think it would have changed the story drastically.
Yeah, I can add to that. So yeah, it's interesting because over these 3 years, the last 3 years, obviously AI massively went up into like the usage and the searches on a day-to-day basis in B2B, and we started to see leads coming from AI platforms, especially ChatGPT, not to name it. I think if we had started now, probably would have thought about it really from the start. But overall, whatever the strategy, I think in terms of content, what you need is really qualitative content. Obviously, when you think about Google, you try to rank on keywords mostly. When you think about AI, you want to rank on more like broad questions or more specific questions rather, very specific queries. But the end goal is still the same. You need to answer questions that are relevant to your audience. And so for that, you need really qualitative content. You need to answer very precisely the questions. Obviously, maybe in B2C, it's a little bit different if it's mass market, but for B2B companies, these are extremely specific questions. There's not so many ways to answer. And if you list those questions and you answer them, well, you're going to rank on Google, you're going to rank on AI, whatever, the algorithm update is going to be, it's going to be the same in the end. So maybe in the next few years, the technique will change a little bit. But I think in the end, it's always the same. You need to answer questions that people are asking.
I love your answers. I think the basics, getting the basics right, and in this case is answering what people are asking and building trust with your content and with everything you do at the end of the day. Not only content, but the actions, how you communicate, how seamless is the interaction in your website. All those things at the end of the day count as a whole. So I love your answers. Let's move into LinkedIn. The second part of the question, how was that experience?
LinkedIn is another story. So Google Ads was interesting, but LinkedIn Ads was for sure the cornerstone of the strategy. So, well, first I have to thank Sébastien Castelli. I don't want to forget that, because we partnered with a freelancer that is absolutely amazing. He's based in France, so thanks a lot for it's. Actually, lots of the strategy is also coming from him. What I said before, you need MQAs, so you need marketing qualified accounts, and you need to make sure that consistently you've got quality leads with like a persona that is interesting enough for the sales team. And you want, as Matthieu said at the beginning, you want to start easy. You don't want to overthink the process. And so what we did was initially, so the first step of the strategy was to separate the targets into one cluster for banks, one cluster for fintechs. And we tried as much as possible to use what LinkedIn provided in terms of filters. Banks, kind of easy-ish. So you've got a filter that is banking or banking sector or banking services. It's banking, pretty much. So you've got that in LinkedIn, and pretty much in there, you've got all the banks. Caveat that you might have also some neobanks. So depending on what kind of message you want to have is also sometimes a little bit tricky. Some fintechs register themselves as banks. So you have to be aware of this. But then when you start targeting banks on LinkedIn, you've got one big issue is that obviously for most people, I think banks are BNP Paribas, HSBC, JP Morgan, those kind of banks, but actually there are hundreds of them. Some are really, really small. They are targeting very niche markets. And these are, in terms of prospects, the ones that are the most interesting for Numeral in many ways. And also you don't want your ads to only show to BNP Paribas people, which is what's going to happen if you only target those big fishes. So what we did was we got this cluster of banks and we started to distribute for a call layer. So we distributed actually the content within the ads with PDFs. And the goal was to generate engagement, to try to get as much engagement as possible and try to get them eventually to some lead generation campaign. That was the second layer. So that's for banks. For fintechs, it's a little bit more complicated. Most fintechs will register themselves as financial services, but financial services is both too broad and too narrow. Too broad because you've got actually some companies that are absolutely not fintechs that are in there, or actually maybe not completely not fintechs, but not the ones that would be interesting for us. And some others will register not as financial services, but in very specific sectors that are interesting for their own prospects. So you will have, for instance, obviously, if you want to target insurtechs, you will get to insurance, but you will have also all the computer software companies, software development, all internet information technology. Obviously, you don't want to use that as filters because otherwise you will get completely wild in terms of segmenting. So that's kind of tricky. So what we ended up doing is that we use that for the first layer. We use financial services, try to get engagement so as to see which companies were going to be engaged on the content we were producing. And on the second layer, which was for pushing people to our guide downloads, we were importing directly companies from the enrichment we did in the CRM. And I think Matthieu can talk about it on how we mapped all these companies together. But the goal was to have like kind of two approaches, one with the filters on LinkedIn, one with some kind of import, which is never really perfect. But with that, we kind of mapped the fintech sector on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and maybe if I can add on the source for the deterministic part when we import a list of accounts, we are super lucky to sell to regulated companies that are supervised by national authorities that publish the registers of these companies on their websites. So we had actual lists of like for each and every country, all the fintechs, all the banks with some like further classifications, what financial services they offer or not to their customers. That was gold for us. So we had a very, very good and accurate first database of companies we could target that could be relevant. Then we did some further enrichment and filtering on these databases. But yeah, we've been super, super lucky to have that as a starting point.
Of course, not many companies are that lucky of having, these are the list of accounts that I should go after. And then whatever you do with your marketing, that's another story. But having that list certainly is a huge help. You defined your segmentation, you were doing great, and then your business was acquired, and that brings a whole new layer of complexity in defining and reaching the right audiences. So can you tell us about that experience and how it changed the way you thought about your ICP?
Yeah, I can start. So let's say from a strategic point of view, it was just an acceleration. Like it puts us a few years ahead of where we were in terms of kind of companies we wanted to target. More explicitly, overall, the company that acquired us, Mambu, they're selling to financial services companies, so banks, fintechs, etc. It's just that they were already addressing big established banks that we were not ready to address yet because of many elements. And so we came into a position where we knew we were able to sell to these big banks. So what really changed? It opened us their portfolio of established banks we could sell to, and so with the help of the sales team, the customer success team, etc., of the company that acquired us, we could pitch our solution to these accounts. And they already had identified opportunities for us in these accounts. So then we were going there. The main other impact it had is that it accelerated our geographic expansion. So prior acquisition, we were mostly targeting continental Europe and the UK. Why, in addition to, of course, potential GTM capacity, our product was geographically limited because we integrate with local banks, local payment methods, etc. And so addressing a new geography involves major developments. But now with new resources, etc., we could accelerate our geographic expansion. And so we are currently in the exercise of aligning the markets we address with our parent company. Meaning we need to build a relatively whole new go-to-markets and acquisition machines in these new geographies. Well, lucky us again, whether in Europe or in Brazil or in Singapore, those are still financial services companies, so banks, fintechs, etc., that are regulated. And so for most cases, we still can find the list of these companies on the local regulators' websites. And so we have the same starting point that what we have in Europe. And then so we can follow the same strategy than we had in Europe in terms of finding the accounts. We have the list. In terms of strategy, well, they have their local payment systems with their own complexities that we can talk about in our content that we can address through the entire sales cycle.
For me, the story it's a little bit different. I think Matthieu is very lucky. For me, at the moment, we are acquired. We are also at the moment where we start launching new products. The both elements at the same time makes me want to segment and target even like in a more narrow fashion all these companies. And at this point, you can't only rely on these two clusters and the layers and all the imperfections, because you want to be way more precise into the bank tiering. So the different size of the banks, you want to be more precise on the kind of fintechs you want to target. You want to make sure that there are PIs, EMIs, so payment institutions, money institutions, but also which kind of fintech we are like really targeting. So at this point, so we use another file for the new product we were launching. Lucky us, we had the basis of the file, but then we had to rely on other tools. And so that's where we started to use Clay for the segmentation, and actually starting to use AI really for segmenting all this database and having all these segments in order. You can do amazing stuff with like very easy workflows where you just have like very, very detailed definitions of these companies. You ask the AI to just go online and check for this information and classify those companies. And I would say that for about 85% of the companies we were targeting, we could enrich them that way. And then also having the personas and the people to talk to through either outbound campaigns or directly reach out from the sales teams. But that was really important, and that was really important in the context of the acquisition itself, because obviously we wanted to match both CRM instances, see where we had overlaps, and the overlaps really relied on this segmentation. So we had to make sure that the segmentation on both sides was exactly the same, adjust it a little bit, and then market all different segments the right way. So that was kind of a tricky challenge, to be honest, but that was really fun to do. And don't want to advertise Clay too much, but that was definitely a good tool to do this.
No, definitely. And with Clay, just very shortly on Clay, were you just asking like a prompt to classify that with AI, or you were connecting with another vendor? What did you do, if you could be more specific?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So there were like several things. So yeah, first thing first, definitely we just had prompts to segment the database. That was the first thing. Then you have to make sure that either it's in the CRM from Numeral or the CRM from Mambu, updated the right way, and potentially merge also some companies together that could be potentially on both sides. Something we eventually didn't do was to start to have some dedicated messages within Clay, pre-made messages for the sales team. Eventually, we didn't go that far because the merger was faster than the way I implemented it, but definitely that was the next step. And also the big workflow I was working on was for all these marketing qualified accounts we were receiving. It was really important to automate the way they were coming as a segment. So we were making sure that the banks coming as leads were actually in the right segment in the CRM, or if we didn't have it for some reason, make sure that automatically in the CRMs were targeted the right way, and reaching those personas. So same, when a salesperson was reaching out, he could or she could see the personas from this bank. So that was the thing I was working on. Yeah. So
Great.
Pretty much
again, segmentation of everything, right? That's
exactly
key learning here. Yeah.
Exactly. These are, when you think about it, these are basic steps. It's not super complicated, but then again, you're a small team. You need to get somewhere. You need to get those boxes right, and that's it. Obviously, you can think about agents, big stuff. You always want to experiment with some crazy ideas, but you need to deliver, and you need to deliver efficiently. That's what matters most.
Yeah, and especially if you are merging with another business, that they are categorizing a business with another nomenclature or whatever, you need to be consistent on your messaging and everything. So having the right data in your CRM, I think in that case was really, really important.
100%.
All right, so let's move into the challenges of working for a fintech startup and scale ups, which often need to do more with less, right? Why does building a multi channel demand engine get so complicated when budgets are lean? And how have you managed to make it work in practice?
Matthieu, do you want to start, or do I?
Yeah, I can start at a high level. So it's hard, but it's a very good forcing function. It's hard because like there is so much you want to do, so much topics you want to cover, so much channels you want to cover, so much workflows you want to put in place, but like you don't have the resources, you don't even have like the people to do that. So you have to make decisions and to prioritize. But I think that's actually a good thing, and that helps us like the right foundations in place before like we expand to new things. So more specifically, the way we started, and a bit of that is like it happened just because it happened. Like not everything was planned ahead, but the way we did as a small startup, like as a 2.5, 3 people marketing team, we first put in place our like evergreen campaign to make sure we had like our steady flow of qualified leads. We knew we had at least a machine in place. It was not the best one, not the most comprehensive one, but we had something working, and we knew that we could rely on that to have a steady flow of incoming leads. And once we had that, then we could be more opportunistic. Another element on which we are lucky in our ecosystem, in our industry, is that it's heavily regulated. There are new regulations that impact our customers, that impact the way they have to implement products like ours, that force them sometimes to implement products like ours. So whenever we were seeing like new events like that, we had a fast turnover, seeing a news, analyzing a new regulation, sharing content on that to our audience, and then putting our product in front of these new requirements for our audience. And so that's also like a muscle we built to be able to very quickly analyze and make quick campaigns out of new regulations. So then we had opportunistic growth engines at our hands. And I guess had we had like maybe more means, more people, etc., maybe we would have gone into like your classic big marketing team structure and work streams and whatnot, and maybe it would have prevented us to have like this agility of catching new events, new regulations, and acting up on them.
Yeah, totally. For me, I think the first answer I always give is start manually. Start to do things manually to understand what's in your base. So especially when you're dealing with all these, list of companies, all these list of people, you need to understand which companies you're talking about, which kind of job roles you're talking about, and it can vary a lot from a big bank to a small bank to a fintech. You need to understand all that, and you need to do this manually at the beginning. So if you're really at day zero of your GTM marketing strategy, really starting manually is always good, as a good thing. And when you start understanding better, you start to automate. And then, as Matthieu is saying, start with something start doing something actually. Just do something, start marketing, start complexifying the segmentation along the way. And the more you grow, the more you will have like a complex and segmented approach the way we did. And I think it's quite powerful, but just stay consistent, repeat, validate the assumption, and don't rush into like the very cool automated stuff, because maybe that's not exactly what you want at the beginning, and you need to understand that. And that's the same for the tools that you have at your disposal. I think in growth marketing, we have so many tools, that's so many strategies available. If you're on LinkedIn every day, you feel like you're missing out, 50 tools and 50 strategies that you could put in place. But just pick one thing that you are comfortable with so that you can start. Use those tools like for dedicated use case. You want really to prove something, and then just do it and put your head down, focus, stick to it. Don't try to do too many things at the same time. Just stick to your strategy. And if you're producing quality sales, quality content in marketing, it's gonna work. I'm pretty sure if the product is there, if the market is there, it's gonna work. So eventually you also rely on, the bigger the bigger picture of the company. So it's about the market too.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all those details. We've covered a lot today, from defining ICPs in complex industries to scaling demand generation across channels and geographies. I want to say thank you so much, Aurélien and Matthieu, for sharing all these details on how you can target very precise audiences with lean budgets as well. So thank you so much. And for our audience, if you enjoy this episode, please give us a like on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you have any comments, please write them down, and we can ask them in an upcoming episode. Until the next episode, thank you so much. This has been B2B Marketing Futures. Thank you.